This is Into the Mix, a Ben & Jerry's podcast about joy and justice, produced with Vox Creative. I'm Ashley C. Ford. It's early Tuesday morning in the city of Douglas, Coffee County, Georgia. Population, a little less than 12,000 people. A vast, low-swung building with green tin roofs sits in the shadow of a white water tower. This is the Douglas Central Square complex, the town square. By the parking lots, the smoke and smell of barbecue waft over the atmosphere. People set up tents and stakes in the ground with red, white, and blue signs saying, "Vote such and such for sheriff," and "Vote for who and which for district judge." Drivers honk for their favorite candidates as they pass by on the way to cast their votes. Today is Georgia's Primary Tuesday.
How are y'all this morning?
Just to the side of the larger crowd of political supporters and barbecues.
Nice to meet you. I'm Olivia. I was going to say how you knew it was me, but I'm the only black woman standing up here, and you've seen my picture, huh?
Miss Olivia Coley Pearson is wearing a black and white dashiki that reads, "I matter, you matter, black voters matter."
Trying to encourage people of the importance.
She introduces our team to other volunteers.
This Mr. Perry.
Hello.
This.
Hey, what's up? All right.
That's Isaiah. And this is Miss Catherine.
Hi, how are you?
Nice to meet you. Hey.
Mr. Perry, Isaiah, Miss Catherine, they're all volunteers with the Black Voters Matter Fund, founded in 2016. And they're out here to increase political power in marginalized, predominantly black communities through voting. Olivia Coley Pearson, Miss Livvy, as she is affectionately called, has been doing this work for decades.
When I returned from college, I was doing this. I've been doing this. And I came back home in 1983. So I had my children sometimes during that span from 85 to 89 or so. And but I would do it before the kids, and once the kids got a little up in size, I resumed it and been doing it ever since. And the kids are now all grown. Well, you can figure it out, 80, 89, and now they got to be grown.
Every election day, not only does she set up out here in the South Georgia heat.
Some people need rides to the polls. So some of them I have not checked with, but there are several today that's always need rides, so I'm going to follow up with a few of those.
Miss Livvy is out here fighting for black voters. She's fighting for every eligible voter to not only get to the polls, but for their votes to count, too. Because in Douglas, a small town in Coffee County, Georgia, the safety of each vote isn't guaranteed. Not when there is a strategic and systematic effort to keep black people from the polls, as is the case in many places across the country. What's one thing that you think people need to know about you?
I am big on justice.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like to see anyone mistreated. I do not like to see people who are less fortunate be looked down upon. I'm very passionate. I love people. It hurts me to see anybody mistreated.
And you don't like bullies?
I don't. Not at all.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all.
Miss Livvy is no stranger to bullies, and she's no stranger to voter disenfranchisement either. The work she does is vital. It is also very dangerous. In 2016, she was charged with voter fraud, and then charged a second time in 2018 on the same case, just because she helped a young black woman cast her first vote. And if the name of this town sounds familiar, Douglas, Coffee County, this might be why.
Today, based on information developed by that investigation, a Fulton County grand jury returned a true bill of indictment, charging 19 individuals with violations of Georgia law arising from a criminal conspiracy to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election in this state.
After the 2020 election, Trump operatives and attorneys scrambled to access election data across the country. They were looking for something, anything, to support the baseless claim that the election was stolen from the former president. Those voter fraud cries reached a crescendo on January 6, 2021. The country watched far-right extremists storm the U.S. Capitol that horrible day. That scene of white mobs, as shocking as they were to see in 2021, for folks who know American history, those scenes harken back to a time when white mobs used political violence to disenfranchise Black voters. So it's not new. The ideology that created the violence on January 6th has been alive since the 15th Amendment ended racial discrimination in voting, and Black men got access to the franchise. White backlash to racial equality is as American as apple pie. Then on January 7th, Trump operatives allegedly had bold, direct help from local election officials in Coffee County, who are being investigated for allegedly helping a data firm access and copy sensitive voter information and election software. For Miss Livvy, what happened in Douglas Coffee County on January 7th was hardly a surprise. She knows this community, and for better or worse, they know her too. As a matter of fact, the person who accused her of voter fraud is a named defendant in Trump's Georgia indictment.
I will find myself speaking to bullies sometimes when I've witnessed things, and maybe I shouldn't, you know. It could really be dangerous. But I have found myself sometimes, speaking out when I've seen things that shouldn't be.
Absolutely. People like Miss Livvy, actually, let me be a lot more specific. Black women like Miss Livvy have been a vital bastion in our fight to protect voting rights since before we even had the right to vote ourselves. Poll workers, poll watchers, volunteers, election commissioners. These are the people doing the unglamorous work of protecting our democracy. Today, we're kicking off a 3-part series from Coffee County, also known as Crooked Coffee, where we'll look at the great lengths white supremacy has taken to suppress votes in towns like this for decades. Episode 1, Miss Livvy Against the Machine. Let's get into it.
I'm a little tired right now, but...
The day after the primaries, Miss Livvy and I sat down.
I'm Olivia Coley Pearson. I'm a native of Douglas, Coffee County, born here.
Her parents taught their kids to value education.
Of the 9 children in our family here in Douglas, 7 of 9 got college education. So, yeah, my mother and father, Gladys and Henry Coley, raised a very close-knit family. We used to have prayer together every night when we were growing up. Had to pray, regardless of what you were doing around 9 o'clock p.m. You stopped, and we went inside to read the Bible and pray.
Gladys Coley instilled strong faith in her children and a fighting spirit. She served with the local NAACP back in the 70s and helped sue the city of Douglas to gain more Black political representation in local government. It's a fight her daughter carries close to her heart.
Mom used to say so many times, do unto others. You treat people the way you want to be treated. And that's what sticks out with me so much.
So when young Miss Livvy went off to college in Atlanta, she got involved in politics.
I attended Clark College, majored in political science, worked with the Andy Young mayor's campaign up there some, and then came back home and began getting involved here with the political process.
Her interest in politics and government continued to grow. She followed in her mother's footsteps and volunteered on election days to help people cast their vote. She also ran for public office herself and was elected to represent her community as a city commissioner for Douglas. Miss Livvy was the first Black woman to hold that office in Douglas, and she was reelected 5 times. As a commissioner, Miss Livvy established the City of Douglas Race Relations and Advisory Council, a space for constituents to raise concerns with elected officials. And her voice was instrumental in getting more qualified people of color in key department positions inside government offices, when there were none before she started. Miss Livvy built a reputation as a dedicated civil servant, which is why her constituents were shocked when she was arrested for voter fraud in 2016. The case against her began in 2012. So let's go back to 2012. Do you remember helping a young woman cast her vote?
I've helped so many. I've helped several people to cast their votes. Now, if you're referring to one in particular that ended up going to trial, I can't swear and say that was the person. Mm-hmm. I didn't know her.
So here's the story. On October 15, 2012, the very first day of early voting, Deowana Robinson, a young 20-something Black woman, went to the local board of election in Douglas to vote. It was her first time, and she needed someone to explain how the process worked. She looked around and saw Miss Livvy doing what she always does, helping people to vote.
I remember her stopping me as I was about to leave from the polling precinct. Mm-hmm. I had been there either voting myself or assisted someone, I can't recall. And the lady told me, who brought her, she said, I have to go pick up somebody else and I'm running late. But she doesn't know how to vote. So I walked her through the process. We got to the table where you, at that time, it's different now. Mm-hmm. Now it's electronic, where you touch and sign your name. Then there were papers lying on the table.
Yep.
We got there to that first station, and I told her you have to complete your information right here at this table. Then when you do it,
then
go to the
Misty Hayes, who was a voter registration clerk in Douglas at that time, told Miss Livvy to sign a paper. Remember that name, Misty Hayes. So Miss Livvy signed the paper as she was instructed by the registration clerk and continued to walk Deowana Robinson through the basics.
I say, when you see candidates that you want, you touch the box to the left of their name, touch it, then you go on to the next one. And I told you, keep doing this until you're done. At the end, you'll review your ballot. If it's correct, you hit cast ballot. She said, okay. I walked away. She did not begin voting while I was standing there. So that in no way is providing assistance to her.
No, that would have been reading the candidates' names, possibly touching the screen for her.
Right.
Things like that. Blame it on incompetence or lack of training or whatever. Even if it wasn't intentional, that paper Miss Livvy was instructed to sign, it turned out to be a trap.
She did not explain to me, if you're going to provide her assistance, she has to be either illiterate, she has to be disabled, and you have to sign the paper saying that. Had the election supervisor told me why particularly I needed to sign the paper, then I would have asked the young lady, well, are you illiterate or disabled?
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
She didn't tell me that. The election supervisor said, to go to her machine, you must sign the paper. Misleading.
Very much so. This simple, unmemorable interaction in October 2012 became the source of felony charges of voter fraud brought against Miss Livvy in 2016, a whole 4 years later. She was charged with 1 count of illegally assisting a voter who did not need assistance to cast a vote and 1 count of falsely attesting that voter was illiterate, all because Misty Hayes instructed her to sign that form.
First time ever being arrested. Yeah. First time ever. I actually went into would depression be the right word? I had thoughts in my mind that I've never, ever had in my life before. just keeping it real. But that not being me, that went away right quick because that's not me. I'm depressed. I'm angry. I'm stressed. But when I came to reality, I began to pray. But I had a talk with God, and one of the things that I can remember him saying to me, I am going to bring you through this.
Miss Livvy credits her faith for helping her get through the first trial that was held in Coffee County, where Douglas sits. In the end, the judge declared a mistrial when the jury couldn't reach a consensus. There was one juror, a young Black woman who refused to find Miss Livvy guilty, despite other jurors bullying and intimidating her. When I initially was learning about these investigations and learning about you and your work, it took me a minute to realize that I was reading about two different trials and that there was a second trial. I just couldn't believe it.
Yeah.
And also that trial would have to be tried in a different venue, Jessup, I believe.
Yeah. The second
trial.
When when the DA said he was going to retry, I had new attorneys. I had the Southern Center for Human Rights, who had taken my case at this point. They filed for a change of venue to get it out of Coffee County because their research firm had did the research to prove and to show that I wouldn't have gotten a fair trial here in Coffee County, which I thought was so sad.
That's beyond sadness, isn't it?
It really is.
It's like a heartbreak.
It's very hurtful. To this day, when I think about it, I still cry.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
And I have to agree. It's hard to believe that a woman with a fierce loyalty to her town and its people, who'd by then dedicated 17 years of service as a civil servant, couldn't get a fair trial in the community she served. The town that raised her is also the town that criminalized her. Miss Livvy's second trial was held in Jessup, Georgia, about an hour east of Douglas and Coffee County, and it was a completely different experience.
It got my attention and struck me that some strangers who don't know a thing about me can hear this information in this courtroom, just like Coffee County folks heard it, and these folk can make an intelligent, unbiased decision for justice. They heard the same thing. That young girl said she asked for help. She didn't know me. I didn't know her. That same election supervisor who told me to sign the paper, that same lady, Miss Misty Hayes Hampton Martin, has now been indicted by Fonnie Willis in Atlanta in the RICO case with Trump and the 18 or however many people got indicted.
Yeah.
She is one of those with that.
That's right. Donald Trump and 18 others, including Misty Hayes, were charged together under racketeering or RICO charges in Georgia. Oh, wow.
Who allowed people to come into the Coffee County Board of Elections office and scan voting data.
Wow. Misty Hayes. Hayes was the election supervisor in Coffee County. She's no longer the election supervisor for many reasons.
Misty Hampton, also known as Emily Misty Hayes. Every individual charged in the indictment is charged with one count of violating Georgia's Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act through participation in a criminal enterprise to accomplish the illegal goal of allowing Donald J. Trump to seize the presidential term of office beginning on January 20th, 21.
She's been indicted by Fannie Willis, the district attorney of Fulton County, Georgia, after allegedly allowing Trump operatives into the Board of Elections to copy election data and software. That same person, Misty Hayes, was sitting at the DA's table during Miss Livvy's 2 trials back in 2016 and 2018. But even with Misty Hayes' questionable witness at Miss Livvy's trials, it only took the Jessup jury about 20 minutes to acquit Miss Livvy.
In Wayne County, Jessup, Georgia, less than 20. It was less than 20. The judge even asked the question during the trial, why are we here? Why are we here? After hearing testimony from the girl and my attorneys, he asked, why are we here?
Miss Livvy was acquitted of all voter fraud charges brought against her. What were you facing had you been convicted?
5 years prison.
5 years in prison.
Yes.
You were facing 5 years in prison in one court in your home, and in the next court, they didn't even know why you were on trial.
That's exactly right.
Wow.
That's exactly right.
So, why? Why was Miss Livvy unable to get a fair trial in Coffee County, and why was she acquitted almost immediately just one town over? That's next when we come back.
You turn right here.
This is the building here, huh? Miss Olivia Coley Pearson is showing us around Douglas, the town where she was raised and came back to after college.
Yeah, this is the Gladys Coley Resource Center. So this is on Roper Street. My mother, Gladys Coley, and John Lee Roper, and a gentleman, Elisha Harrell, they were supposedly were the ones who sued the city to get more black representation on the city council. I replaced Mr. Harrell on the city council.
Gladys Coley lived long enough to see her daughter, Olivia Coley, become the first black woman elected as commissioner in Douglas Coffee County in 1999. And she was reelected 5 more times for a total of 24 years of service. Gladys Coley didn't actually want her daughter to come back to Douglas after she graduated from college in Atlanta.
She knew, because she knew her child, she knew what I was up against in a community like this. She knew. So sometimes I wish I had not came back. But sometimes I'm glad I came back. Because I guess this was the work that was meant for me to get out here and do.
What Miss Livvy's mother knew about the people of this town is also made clear in the way they've treated the Gladys Coley Resource Center. The building has been neglected.
The inside of the center, it wasn't built properly. Water comes all in when it rains and so forth and so on. It's supposed to be to have community meetings, workshops, educational things to better the community.
But the mayor changed the locks on the door to the resource center. When we saw Miss Livvy back in May, the community didn't have access to the building.
Some of the ladies from my women group had requested to get in it this past weekend, and I was told that he told them that the guy over the center told them that the mayor said no. So I haven't inquired because I've been busy trying to get ready for election and stuff.
It seems strange to erect the building and then not care for it or allow it to be utilized in a way that makes sense, even for the purpose of it being built.
Right.
That's so confusing.
Well, it's just the mayor's personal animosity towards me. And why he would have it, I don't know, other than the fact, because I assisted him, helped him to get elected as the first black mayor. But I guess he thought that I would go along with anything on the council. He really didn't know me, you know.
Or he wasn't paying attention.
Right. So, yeah, things he was doing, I spoke out against it if I felt that they were wrong. So he has animosity toward me. I'm just putting it bluntly.
I mean, sometimes it just is that blunt. There's nothing else to say about
That's
it.
right.
It's like, that's just what it is. The city of Douglas, Georgia is 52% black, while the surrounding Coffee County is 68% white. Jessup, where Miss Livvy's legal battle came to a swift and decisive end when a jury acquitted her in 20 minutes, Jessup is still very white. But I noticed one thing that says the quiet part out loud. Outside of Jessup's courthouse stands a monument to soldiers of the Revolutionary War. On its base is a dedication reading, "They helped to give us our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, an independent Supreme Court, and a nation of free men." Meanwhile, outside the Coffee County Courthouse where Miss Livvy was first tried, a looming marble pillar juts into the sky, a soldier perched on top, inscribed on its base, "In memory of our Confederate soldiers." In Coffee County, conservatives flying the false flag of voter fraud have found sympathetic ears. In a now-deleted Facebook Live video recorded on January 5th, 2021, former Coffee County GOP leader Kathy Latham railed against Miss Livvy's Get Out the Vote efforts. Quote, "Olivia Pearson's up to her normal, handing out hamburgers and hot dogs to people who voted." She goes on, "All kinds of things happening in Coffee County to get people to come vote. Yeah, it's not really a good situation down here." Latham then urges her supporters to cast their own ballots. "We got to outvote the fraud," she says. Since then, Latham has been charged with 11 counts in the Georgia election interference case.
Miss Livvy, listen, there are organizers and there are people who literally put their spirit, their soul, they put everything on the line so that the rest of us can actually enjoy this democracy. And Miss Livvy is one of those people.
Latasha Brown is the co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund, one of the voting rights organizations Miss Livvy partners with.
She's gone through all kinds of experiences of her adversaries to try to attack her character, to make her lose her job, to even going as far as trying to put her in jail, right? And she still keeps coming back. She still keeps coming back. Her resilience, right? Her resiliency, her commitment, and her love for human beings. That is what's going to change the world.
Latasha co-founded Black Voters Matter Fund in 2016 out of frustration with the way people talk about Black voters in the South.
There was never any resources for those of us that were doing work to actually mobilize around. And so there needed to be a more coordination and a more collaborative kind of infrastructure for us to work together to really protect democracy and build power.
Even as BVM continues to build political power, in places like Douglas Coffee County, the labor of people like Miss Livvy are what's going to make a difference.
It will not be our politics that will save us. It will be our humanity. And if I were to say that there's somebody who is the embodiment of not just fighting because we're fighting to make a system better, but they're actually fighting on behalf of the people, it would be Miss Olivia. In terms of Douglas and other rural communities, I think people need to know that Black people, people of color, they are afraid to get out and vote because some of the things that have been going on.
Fear is the point.
That's what's happening now. And that's called voter suppression. Everything I went through was voter suppression.
Yeah.
We're faced with it in the state of Georgia as well as our whole United States. Because some people are so hell-bent on getting their way, and that evolves into voter suppression.
Miss Livvy's case was one of about 250 cases of voter fraud charges brought to Georgia's election board in the rural parts of the state during that time. even though less than 1/5 of voters in Georgia live in rural counties. This tactic has a chilling effect.
It's psychological. It's the kind of psychological warfare.
That's Pastor Dawn Jones. She came through the voting polls at Douglas Central Square Complex to cast her own vote.
If you're not versed enough to see it, you wouldn't think it's happening, and it would appear that we just have a just community, but no, it's not.
She sat with Miss Livvy during the trials and offered prayers and emotional support.
I've been in Douglas for about 30 years. So when I came here, she was a commissioner. So I was very active in the community at the time, and I got to meet her. So I got involved at the meetings and in politics, and I began to see what she was experiencing. And I'm glad it wasn't me. And I couldn't do what she did.
Yeah.
I was very, very active. I was going to run, get involved, run as a commissioner, run for the position of mayor. But after I saw what they did to her in court, I disappeared off the scene.
What kind of impact did those charges have on your life?
Oh, Lord, have mercy. I'm sorry.
Please, don't apologize. You earned every tear.
My health has drastically declined since going through everything that I've gone through. I've been diagnosed with fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis. Stress can do so much, but I've had a stroke to my eye since all of this happened. Had to have stents put in my heart. Yeah. It has shortened my life.
Isaiah Goodwin, a poll watcher who volunteers with Miss Livvy, says that fear is an effective tactic of voter suppression.
People stop wanting to go vote because they'll be like, well, they can do it to her, they can do it to me, and clearly she didn't do anything wrong. So back to that word, fear. And that fear kind of keeps certain folks in office, certain folks in power, which is obviously probably why they do it, to keep attain on power.
He says this maneuver is on steroids in a small town like Douglas.
Atlanta has voter suppression. It has a lot of it. But Atlanta's always in the light. So it's a limit on how far they can go. Small towns, they have folks in power that say, hey, do what you want to do. So when you don't have it in the light, they know ain't nobody really watching them like that, so they can do what they want to do.
Working with Miss Livvy the last several years has been educational for Isaiah. When he canvasses and goes door to door, he tries to connect with voters who express fear about getting involved or doubt about the power of their vote.
I understand exactly why you feel that way, but I say too much is riding on your vote. And what I would tell people is, you may not do politics, but politics is going to do you. There's people that's elected, they're going to decide how high your light bill is going to be. Politics is your whole life. Your whole life, somebody is deciding your decisions. Somebody. And whether you have a say on that or not is up to you. But I mean, if you don't have a decision on, somebody else going to do it for you.
And he's not wrong. We cannot let fear paralyze us.
You've got to stand up for your rights. You don't give your rights away. You don't let anybody just take them. I mean, you just don't do that. Alone, you don't have as much power. And we all know that there is strength in numbers. So connect to an organization like Black Voters Matter that's doing positive things to galvanize yourself. I mean, because You can get more accomplished by getting more engaged and involved with an organization such as this.
As the general elections come up this November 5th, we have to remember that the future of our democracy is at stake. Please don't stay on the sidelines while others decide your future for you. Visit blackvotersmatterfund.org to get involved in the process, like Miss Livvy said. And to learn more about your voting rights, go to benjerry.com/vote. Next time on Into the Mix.
Those same people who are so quick to say it's voter fraud, I believe those are the ones that's committing it.
Whenever there has been Black progress in this nation, there's always been a backlash.
A look back at how Georgia lawmakers set the stage for voter suppression efforts, and a look forward to where we go from here. Into the Mix is a Ben & Jerry's podcast produced with Vox Creative. This episode was written by Priscilla Alabi. The Vox Creative team includes lead producers Priscilla Alabi and Jules Bradley, production supervisor Taylor Henry, and production manager Jessica Bay. Martha D. Sally is our supervising producer. Anu Subramanian is our executive producer. The team also includes Amy Wenzel, Senior Manager of Creative Services Michelle Blam, Associate Director of Project Management, Director of Post-Production Greg Russ, and Post-Production Manager Andrew Hannon. Kyle Neal engineered this episode. Felicia Dominguez is our junior engineer. Original music by Israel Tutson. A special thank you to Kelly Young, our sensitivity reader, and Zoe Mullick, our fact checker, and to Ariane Young for her support, and to C-SPAN. The Ben & Jerry's team includes Jay Tandon, Jay Curley, Sanjana Mahesh, Chris Miller, and Palika Makam. I'm Ashley C. Ford. Thank you for listening.
Vox Creative.